Let's do some monitoring and corrective actions. So number 5 now is the corrective action. You monitor the critical limit, and if it came out right, good. You go on with the rest of your day. You write down the number or the observation and you move on. What if you didn't hit the critical limit? Then you have to fix that problem, and that's called a corrective action. You're correcting the problem. So the corrective action is the actions that are taken whenever a critical limit is not met at the critical control point. So it's the critical control point where you set the critical limit to make sure you've taken care of the hazard. When you didn't hit that critical limit, then you take a corrective action so you do hit the critical limit. Meaning that monitoring has shown that the lettuce is dirty, the fish smells, the serving line temperature is too low, the employee didn't wash their hands, so we're correcting that problem. We're taking the lettuce back and rewashing it. We're throwing the fish out. We're raising the temperature on the serving line and reheating any foods that fell below 135. We're having the employee wash their hands and perhaps throw out product that they touched, and perhaps doing some retraining. So those would be corrections, corrective actions. When a problem happens, which means you didn't hit the critical limit, the staff should do whatever the HACCP plan says to do. So as a test question, if the ABCD, one of the answers is what the HACCP plan says to do, that's what you want to do. That's why we had a HACCP team. They put all this stuff in place, so you just go look and see what the HACCP team said you should do in that circumstance, such as they're saying for whatever the problem is, you should discard the food that would pose a threat, then do that. If it says you should reject a shipment of raw oysters without tags, so raw oysters come in, there's no tags, you just refer back to the corrective actions listed by the HACCP team, and you get rid of the raw oysters. Dispose of contaminated food properly. How do you get rid of that food? Do it the way the HACCP plan says. Further cooking, reheating, and additional washing are all appropriate corrective actions as long as food safety is not compromised. So the question might be, which of these can you do? Which one is appropriate? And you can do any of those, cooking, reheating, or additional washing, as long as those actions will fix the problem. Food safety is not compromised, your customer will not get sick. Corrective action must be specific as to how the problem will be fixed, so you can't just say pull the item off the line if it's under 135 and reheat it. You have to say reheat it to 165. The corrective action must be documented. What did you do? When did the action take place? Why do you care when the action took place? Is in case something happens, you can tell if your records indicate you had a problem at that time. So for example, somebody says, I ate with you yesterday about 5:30 and I got sick as a dog. So if you look at your records and you see that at 5:40 we pulled product off the line, instead of 135 it was 120. So well, you know what, that could have been, we might have caused that illness. Somebody else hears that happened and they say, hey, I ate there too. What time did you eat? I came at 5:45. No, at 5:35 we pulled the product off the line. That was new, fresh product, and it was hot. Disposition of the product. How did we get rid of that product if disposal was the action? Management's going to want to know, did we do it properly? Did we reject it at receiving? Did we put it in the dumpster? Did we put it down the garbage disposal? Who cares? Let's say it was a swollen can. Did we throw it in the dumpster where a dumpster diver could get it? Or did we send it back to the manufacturer? What did we do with it? So it's very important to indicate what our disposition was. If you can't find an appropriate corrective action for an item, then you need to either modify the product or modify the process. You must correct the problem. So in this case, maybe a larger can would be the issue, or maybe putting the can closer to where he collected all the trash. So you must either, if you have a problem, either modify the product, meaning get a different product. So for example, if your can't seem to get lettuce clean the way you're doing it, then change the product and maybe buy it pre-done, pre-packaged from a company that does that for a living. That's all they do. Or modify the process, so maybe you wash the lettuce twice. Okay, it's the king of repetition. We're at the sixth principle, and let's review the first five. The first principle was hazard analysis. Second principle was where do we fix those hazards, or what are the critical control points. Once we knew that, we went to number 3, which was what are the critical limits to make sure we fix that problem. Then 4 was how do we monitor that critical limit to make sure that we got it right. Number 5 was how do we correct it if we didn't get it right, if we didn't hit the critical limit. And now number 6 is verification. Verification is those activities other than monitoring that determine that the HACCP plan is being followed, that you did what the HACCP plan said to do. So monitoring is taking the temperature. Verification is checking that you took the temperature. So how do you know you took the temperature? You would check your logs, right? How do you know you took the temperature just a minute ago? You might go and take the temperature again. And if they wrote down that it was 135 and you take the temperature and it was 120, then you say, they didn't actually take the temperature, they just wrote down a temperature, right? So those would be both verification activities, verifying that they did what the HACCP plan said they were supposed to do. So if the HACCP plan says to take the serving line temperatures every 30 minutes, how do you know if you did that earlier today? You check the log, or you retake the temperature. So the question is, how often should you do verification? How often should you check to see that they're doing whatever the HACCP plan says to do? The verification should occur at a frequency that can ensure the food safety management system is being followed continuously in order to prevent unsafe food from reaching the customer, to take corrective action without loss of product. In other words, don't wait a month to check and see if they are taking temperatures on the serving line. And if you check regularly, if you verify regularly that they're doing that, then you would throw less product out because it was at the wrong temperature. Often enough to confirm that prescribed personnel practices are being followed. Comply with the established control procedures, whatever the HACCP plan says, that you're making sure that they're doing all of those things on a regular basis, and ensuring that personnel have the tools for proper personal hygiene and sanitary practices, meaning how do you know if they wash their hands? Well, you can observe. How do you know if they used soap? Is there soap there? How do you know if they didn't use their clothing or their rag that they use for sanitation? How do you know if they didn't use that? Well, do you see any paper towels where they could dry their hands? So that's the type of thing that you're going to check on a regular basis, and so you're going to verify often enough. I would say at least weekly you should do some verification activities to make sure that they're doing whatever you told them to do. Any indication of a loss of control should have been taken care of immediately by the people. Do you see evidence in the documentation that it was? So, for example, if you see in the documentation that they took the temperature on the serving line and it was 125, does the log say what they did about that? Did they take the product and put it back in the oven and reheat it to 165? Do you see documentation of that? Do you see that they didn't do that until 20 minutes later? Do you see there was a gap of 45 minutes when they didn't take any temperatures, and then they took a temperature and it was too low? What should they have done? Probably throw the product out. Did they do that? Do you see documentation? Verification must be conducted by somebody other than the person who is directly responsible for performing the activities specified in the Food Safety Management System, or the HACCP plan. So in other words, you can't verify your own stuff, otherwise you're going to say, oh yeah, of course I took all those temperatures. So it needs to be somebody else. Now the HACCP team does the verification, they also work there. So if you happen to be on the HACCP team and you're the person that was to have taken those temperatures, somebody else on the HACCP team would need to verify that all that was done. So again, what is verification? Verification is making sure that the people did whatever the HACCP plan said they were supposed to do. So if it said they were supposed to take the temperature on the serving line every 15 minutes, 4 times an hour, you're going to go look at the logs and see if in fact they did that 4 times an hour. That would be somebody on the HACCP team doing that, and that's called verification, verifying they did whatever you told them to do. An example of verification would be when checking on refrigerator temperatures. After you check the log, find the refrigeration calibration log to make sure that was done. Therefore, they met the critical limits. So you're checking on the refrigerator temperatures, right? You're looking at the log to see if, in fact, they recorded the temperatures, however often they're supposed to do that. And then you would say, well, how do we know that that's the correct temperature on the outside of the refrigerator? Well, you would say, have you had this calibrated? Where does it indicate that you've had this calibrated? So then we can trust the temperature. Random product sampling would be another verification procedure. Random product sampling would be like in the military, they have the officer of the day eats the meal. Right? What is he or she doing? They're tasting the food to see if it's hot, see if it tastes fresh. If it does, that indicates that the employees followed the HACCP plan. So random product sampling would be pulling an item off the line and seeing if the lettuce is dirty. That would be random product sampling. And that would be, test question, would be a verification activity. So they would say random product sampling is what? And that would be verification. You're verifying that the people did what they told you to do because you sampled the product and it was hot, it was free of dirt, whatever else, pH was proper, whatever else the standard is. You're just checking to see